Senator Moran.
Mr. President, thank you very much. I thank the gentleman from Idaho for his kind remarks, and I join my colleagues in expressing our gratitude for his efforts to make certain that we're here today. And what a long time it has been in coming to get us to this point. This is important legislation, and we ought not suggest that because there's such bipartisan support that this is a minor accomplishment. We come together, it seems like, on the small things around here. The big things seem awfully impossible for us to bridge the gap, and therefore to suggest that what we're doing here today is nothing important would be a total mistake. It would be a fabrication of the facts. If we are successful in passing this legislation and the House accepting it in its form that's acceptable to the Senate, signed by the President, this legislation will make a significant and tremendous difference in America, and especially on Main Street, in farms and small businesses across the country. A significant component of what I'm about in my work in the United States Senate is trying to make certain that my colleagues from places that are not rural understand the rural nature of much of America and understand how we do business and how things get done. And as has been indicated by many of my colleagues, in small-town America, nothing gets done without the support of your local financial institution. We earn a living in much of Kansas by small businesses, by farms and ranches. And in the absence of the access to credit, the ability for us to continue to earn a living in small-town America disappears. It was a sad day when the Banking Committee, now 3 years or so ago, passed Dodd-Frank reform legislation, but did so only with Republican votes. The sadness is that we were unable to find common ground and make a difference in a piece of legislation that was passed in years gone by, but we were unable to make the improvements that were necessary, the changes, the alterations that could make Dodd-Frank work for rural America, that could limit its scope to Wall Street, not Main Street. I think Republicans were saying when Dodd-Frank was passed, and many of us voted against it, we were saying, we are going to repeal Dodd-Frank. And that caused many Democrats to say, we are not going to let you touch Dodd-Frank. And so we've been at an impasse when both sides know, when Republicans and Democrats alike know that this bill is causing, this legislation, Dodd-Frank, is causing serious harm to places across the country, but we've gone to our corners. We've argued for full repeal, and you've argued that we're not going to touch it. This is a good day in which we've decided that it's neither one of those extremes. It's the idea that we can find the solutions to problems that exist as a result of legislation that Congress approved. This legislation is important and it matters, and it's important because it demonstrates the United States Senate can function in its proper form, that we can accomplish good common sense things, but it's important because it will alter the landscape and the future of communities across Kansas and around the country. In rural America, we need access to credit. And often, it's too often that access to credit is only available from that small-town lender, that local bank, that credit union, in which they know the community and know their borrowers. One of my colleagues earlier talked about relationship banking. It's the banking system that many of us grew up with, and it's the banking system that still works for us in small-town America. In the absence of the reforms included in this legislation, the ability for many of my banks in Kansas to make home loans will continue to be absent. For the years that I've been on the Banking Committee, I have questioned the examiners, the FDIC, the Comptroller of the Currency, the FDIC, including state banking commissioners. What are you doing to make certain that the regulations don't put out of business the small-town lenders that are so important to the communities that I represent? And it seems that we have gotten lip service. We have a committee, we have a commission, we study these things. But nothing has done, no one, when you ask them, what rule or regulation have you eliminated, there's never an answer that outlines that that's happened. And today, we are altering the opportunity for the regulators to continue to over-regulate financial institutions who are only important to the communities they serve, and if they have financial challenges, does not create a threat to the rest of our banking system or to our country's economy and fiscal condition. Relationship banking matters. And today we have a regulatory environment in which bankers are fearful of making a home loan to a citizen within their community. Somebody who wants to buy a home or build a home is told by their local bank, we can't afford the cost associated with the regulations of making these loans. We can't afford the risk that if we make a technical error, the financial consequences to our bank are so great, we are out of the home loan business. Who would ever expect to go to their hometown bank and discover they don't make home loans? And it's not because there's not the opportunity to make a loan that will be repaid and the bank will make money and the borrower will get the benefit of the loan. It's because the regulations are so onerous and so expensive upon a mistake that the business decision is made, not that this person is not creditworthy, but the risk associated with the regulations is so great, we can't make this loan. We need more banks, more financial institutions making home loans in more communities so that more people in rural America can access the American dream. If we create a banking system in which the rules and regulations dictate every T must be crossed, every I must be dotted, and it's like you have a computer program to plug in the numbers and make a decision whether or not that local banker can make a loan, rural America will no longer be here. For much of the time that I've served in Congress and trying to explain rural America to my colleagues, I've indicated that in communities that I represent, it's often true that economic development can be whether or not there is a grocery store in town. Most people in Washington, D.C. don't understand the nature of that small town. Is there a hardware store? Can the newspaper continue to print newspapers and sell enough advertising and subscriptions to make ends meet? You know when you lose your grocery store that you begin to lose your hometown. And what I've learned over time is it is only that local financial institution, if they're making a loan, are we going to have a grocery store in our town? That local relationship lender knows his community or her community, knows their borrowers, knows whether or not they have the character to repay the loan. And I saw this recently, and we're experiencing this in Kansas again this month, in which wildfires are consuming acres of land across rural Kansas. Our grasslands are burning. A year ago this month, nearly 80% of Clark County, Kansas was consumed in a wildfire. It's a ranching community. Ashland, the county seat, has a population of 900. That's rural. That's the biggest town in the county. The result of those fires were that thousands of head of cattle were killed in the fire or had to be euthanized. And what you would think is the terrible economic consequence to the community. Absolutely. But you would think about, how do we recover? And one of the things you would think about, well, I can go to my bank and borrow money to keep my farm or my cattle operation in business. But those cattlemen no longer had any collateral. There was no collateral to tell your banker, I pledge my cattle to repay the loan. If I don't repay the loan, you get my cattle. The fire consumed their opportunity to rebuild. The president in the Senate today is a member of the Agriculture Committee. He will be asked about the safety net that's in a farm bill, and that's important to us. But the safety net that many farmers and ranchers have in Kansas is the relationship they have with their banker, who makes a decision not based upon a computer program or that every T is crossed, every I is dotted. That banker makes a decision based upon the character and the relationship, the history. And many of our banks in Kansas are owned by families. They've been in the family for generations. The same is true of our farms and ranches, and that relationship allows a banker to make a loan even when there is no cattle due to the result of a natural disaster. The collateral is gone, but the banker knows the family, knows the history, knows whether or not this potential borrower has character, knows if he or she makes a promise to repay that he or she will. And too often those decisions have been taken away from those relationship lenders and resided here in Washington, D.C. with a myriad of regulators who are telling our bankers through their examiners, through the examination process, this is a loan that you can't make, or this is a loan that we will write you up. And today we take another step in the process toward returning the ability for small-town America, its businesses, its farmers, and its ranchers to have a future. This is important legislation that will make a significant difference in the future of communities and the people who live there in rural America and in rural Kansas. This is not about taking care of bankers. It's not about taking care of credit unions. It's about taking care of the people they serve, their borrowers. And that means a bright future for the rest of rural America, for the other people who live in the community, because access to credit determines whether or not there's a grocery store in town or a farmer or a rancher can borrow money to keep their business going, to keep their farm and ranch going. This is a good day, and I commend my colleagues. It's a good day for the United States Senate to see us working together, Republicans and Democrats, to reach a result that will make a difference, a good day for America, a good day for rural America, and a correction, an opportunity for us to correct when we went too far following the financial collapse of 2008. Mr. President, I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I appreciate my colleagues, especially the chairman, the senator from Idaho, for his tremendous efforts in bringing us together and getting us to this point.